is that we do not need to, let's take care of that.
Good, welcome to our new London Design Center. Here we are hosting our 38th Insights Live panel live. And we want to thank you for joining us. We want to thank you for joining us here in the London Design Center, as well as those that have joined us online via Zoom and LinkedIn Live. Today, we're going to bring up the topic about an immersive approach to understanding an empathetic workplace. And with us, we have some experts in the industry that will provide their insights and a lively conversation around this topic. So we look forward to your questions. Please put them in the chat and share them with us, and we'll get them answered as we go throughout this event. So I'd like to start off with Philippe.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here. I'm Philippe Perret, Principal and Managing Director of our Gensler Paris office. I've been with the firm for over 20 years, trained as an architect, but bringing these years of experience working as a workplace designer across a variety of different industries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us in that.
Thanks, Gordon. So yes, my name is Ash, and I am Oracle's Workplace Design Lead, and I look after all our offices in the EMEA region. I've been in the industry for almost over 8 years in the workplace design field. And yeah, so thank you for having me here. Look forward to sharing what we're doing at Oracle.
Excellent. Nick?
Yeah, thanks, Gordon. I'm Nick Baxter and MD of our UK business at Space Store. Very pleased to be in this brand new London Design Centre, opened yesterday for Clerkenwell Design Week. I'm responsible for the UK business commercially, and my own personal bias is towards marketing and strategy. Very honoured to be with our panelists today, and thank you all for coming.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for inviting me along. I started and built a practice called Pringle Brandon, which was heavily involved in workplace. I then took it into Perkins and Will, second only to Gensler and Clients globally, and ran them in Europe and the Middle East for nearly 10 years. And then I started again. I started a new studio with my 2 oldest daughters, both Pringles. So it's really Studio Pringle, daughters and dad. So we're having a lot of fun doing that. Along the way, I've done other things. I've been president of the RIBA. I currently chair the RIBA, and I was one of the founding trustees in Article 25, the humanitarian charity. We're doing a lot of work around the world, mainly in Africa. And
Excellent. And Jessica?
I'm Jess. I'm from TP Bennett. I'm an associate director working with the interiors team, and yeah, predominantly workplace and commercial offices.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I am Gordon McDonald, the strategic account director in our New York office for Space Store, looking after our financial and insurance accounts. So I think this is a very timely topic about how we get back to work. And it's amazing being here in London. You know, we are right outside the Farringdon train station. So you see a lot of foot traffic, a lot of commerce happening. But I think one of the overarching topics of actually this design week has been, as we've spoken to clients, is how to get folks back into work and what that looks like in the landscape of work. How do we have an empathetic approach towards that? And so what we're really looking forward to is how you deliver that to your clients, as well as, as being a client. How do we bring our talent back into the office? How do we use the office? Are we still using it the same way we did prior to the pandemic? I know we're all hoping that that's a sunset side of our lives, but it did really shift the whole landscape of work. And I feel, now we have a time to reset that. How does that look? So I believe I'd like to start with you. Sure. And then you work across multiple regions. So
Yeah, I think what we're seeing in France in particular is that people have come back to the office. They in fact, for the most part, never left. So it might have something to do with the work culture there, or the size of people's apartments, but the fact that also they don't necessarily have long commutes, that then play into them feeling or not feeling it was possible to go to work. So I would say for us what we've seen is the challenge is a little different. I think if there's reluctance perhaps to come back to the office, it may be on the basis of whether or not we're providing them with the types of amenities that they're looking for. And what I mean by that is, as we came out of the pandemic, all the talk was about the office, needing to put a focus on collaboration, socialization, training. But in fact, it's a lot more nuanced than that. What we're seeing now is that people are needing to come back to the office and wanting to come back to the office if they can in fact find places for productive individual work and focus. And so I think we're seeing right now a shift from an overemphasis on coming together to actually the office being a great place to do your most productive, focused individual work. And so that's a challenge. And how do you basically create a happy equilibrium in environments that are uber noisy and very very bustling, which is something that's desirable, yet at the same time making sure that people can be productive and focused and not distracted. So these two extremes need to play together right now, and I think we're still trying to figure out what the secret recipe is to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, because the interesting thing about that is it's not just design, it's not just HR. It has to do with the company culture, it has to do with leadership, management. And I know in the States that we have, companies, I just saw one the other day, they said you've got to be in 50% of the time. That's going to equate to 70% of the time, right? It was interesting. We had one of our global clients in this morning, and he said, you look back to the early days when it was dictated you're in at 9 to 5, but the office was really a draw. Everybody was in at 7:30. They wanted to get to work. How do we reinvigorate that again, but without coming down on the team and saying this is the mandate. So I think it's how are you finding that at Oracle?
I think it's definitely something of a challenge at Oracle, because policy, we've had a very loose policy around people can work from wherever they want, and it's a very flexible approach. And creating a space that caters for all different kinds of people, our workforce is very diverse. We're across the globe, and catering for or creating a standard for everyone is something of a challenge for us. And so we've carried out multiple surveys to understand what is it that people are looking for, and how do we bring these people back and entice them into the space. So yeah, it is a challenge. We're working towards it. We're piloting ideas, trying new things, and see how we get on, what's working, what isn't, and so learning from our feedback from the employees.
Yeah, very interesting. Finding that.
Yeah, I think this is the most interesting time in the workplace for 20 years or more. And in some ways, it's as if COVID never happened. Everybody's back at work, nobody's worried about COVID, even though it's in the atmosphere. But in other ways, everything's changed. So before COVID, working from home was possibly something that people either didn't want to do, or maybe managers distrusted people doing it. Were they really doing any work? Did they have the proper equipment to do it, etc.? Well, of course, working remotely, as everybody had to, proved that it could work very effectively for some people, particularly at the beginning, where everybody was. You hadn't had a big sort of staff turnover, so you're very familiar with your colleagues. And a lot of people moved out, of course. They actually moved out to get more space and a better working environment for home. But the people who suffered the most in that period were probably the new graduates who are renting a room in somebody else's flat. They're balancing a laptop on the bedside table or something, and they also didn't sign up for this. They signed up to make a fabulous network with interesting people and find mentors and learn by osmosis and whatever. So then COVID is over. What we're seeing is a bit of a striation, bit of a shift in power in the workplace. We're seeing actually staff being able to say, no, this is how I want to work. No, this is what suits me. And actually, employees find it quite difficult to, in a sort of polite way, mandate people to come back to the office, and indeed, if they want to do it. So we're seeing the youngest members of staff desperate to build their careers, really wanted to be in the office. Maybe the senior staff desperate to drive the business after, you know, a pretty tough time economically.
Desperate to keep that corporate culture going.
But maybe some of the people in the middle going, it's quite nice in my home in Wimbledon. I get to walk the dog at lunchtime, and no, I won't. You know, maybe I'll come in the middle of the week. Maybe I won't. So interesting sort of power situation or group dynamics. And then we're finding that actually the workplace doesn't work very well anymore. And you know, we're doing studies where people are saying, look, everything is a bit wrong. You know, those big collaboration areas don't work because we're always having somebody remotely collaborating, and so there's noise pollution going on. People are trying to, 2 or 3 of us in the office, maybe 1 or 2 of us somewhere else. They don't work anymore. That doesn't go to happen. So they want to have more big meeting rooms than they did in the past, which is quite surprising. For the big hybrid meetings, more small meeting rooms, or those one person, you know, Zoom call to somewhere else, or maybe 2 persons Zoom call somewhere else. And then the collaboration areas need to be smaller and more intimate and less exposed. So suddenly offices don't work anymore. Everything needs to be recast to try and explore this new environment. And the last thing I said in this first round is people don't really know how it's going to work. You know,
There's quite a lot of stuff we can see going on. And I think we've got another couple of years of experimentation before a new norm and such as that. So it's very exciting time.
Yeah, it's a lot of uncertainty, isn't it? It's interesting. I did a project a few years ago, so this is before COVID times. This was a tech firm, and they actually had the same sort of issue. They wanted people to come back in. This was a project in Munich, and everyone was predominantly remote. In fact, they were consolidating 2 offices. They were really large offices. They're like, we do not need this real estate. So we came in and we took an inventory of the existing offices, and they were a bit dated, very partitioned as well. So not even open plans. They were very old. And it was absolutely empty. It was the strangest thing. This is before COVID time. So, you know, you walk into an office, you'd think it had just been abandoned. Actually, this isn't, you know, a premises that's been in use. It was very weird. All the lights were turned off. And I'm walking around with a client representative, project manager, and a few other members of the project team. We come across a room. We hear shuffling in there. We wonder what's going on. There's nobody here. And we walk into this room, and again, there's rows of desks. There's these boxes piled high, and we're looking at them and we're like, there's fireboxes. Somebody's tried to build a wall or something here. And on the front of it, someone had put through something like letters, A4 paper, Kyle's den. And in there was Kyle.
In his man cave.
He was surprised to see us because we went to see him.
Brilliant.
And, you know, Kyle being
He tried not to see you.
was like, you know, poking his head around this wall of boxes. And we had a really good conversation with him. So actually, it was great that he was there. And we were sort of like asking him, well, why are you here? Like, you know, everyone in your workforce, they're practicing what they preach, being a tech firm, and their sort of premise, most of their work that they do was, you know, the software for video conferencing. So, you know, they're all very comfortable in their own homes and using all the software and, you know, the technology they've developed. But Carl says, look, I just need a routine. You know, I get up, I have to leave my house, I have to get my coffee, I have to have my breakfast, and then I have to go to the office. I do my work. I don't mind if somebody's here or not, but, you know, I have to then leave when it's time to leave, and I can't focus at home. So it was really interesting. Obviously, Carl is very unique, and that is
He's
something.
on some spectrum somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a routine. So there's, you know, we're all individuals,
I
and
think I'm on some spectrum.
but what was interesting about that experience is like, well, how can we get people together? You know, how can we? You know, Carl has got his set routine and everything, and you know, it's really a case of, for us on that project in particular, with it being in Munich in Germany as well. Obviously, big culture around
beer gardens. And so we created a beer garden for them. And the idea was that, okay, you've consolidated your office, but every Friday is a Friday drink.
Lederhosen Day.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're trying to create a space where people can come together. So it is a draw, you know, to bring people in. And it seemed to work. I know that, you know, we did also sort of look at having individual spaces and spaces like Kyle. We did have a quiet booth, which we did label Kyle's Den as the name of that booth. But yeah, it was, you know, the idea for that was just ensuring that we were kind of trying to capture as much as we could. There's a whole workforce of people who weren't willing to come in. And then there was Kyle. So we wanted to make sure that we're, you know, just look at this as like a broad spectrum of people. They all have different needs, but ultimately we all want connection. And, you know, I think Kyle was actually quite happy that we had turned up. That we could
Oh,
sort
really?
of speak
I was going to say, maybe ultimately not everyone.
Yeah.
Connection.
No,
It was
but
found.
Yeah.
I think it's like social human beings, you know, it's that element of actually having a place where that can actually happen.
And I think what's interesting is between your anecdote about Kyle, which is one extreme, and how you design for the extreme, and the notion of empowerment that you brought up, is that in some ways, no one has the answer. It requires from us designer to be more humble than ever before. And going back to the topic of the discussion here, empathy, right? Being able to see the world through a number of people's eyes, right? And I think part of the challenge for us is perhaps changing the ways in which we engage in the design process, where we're coming in as experts, but without all the answers, right?
Yes.
And so it's
Experts
really about
without expertise.
right. And it's about being open-minded and asking questions, and something that we do with our team is engaging upfront. The upfront engagement is so critical to have discussions with larger swaths of team members and collaborators than we've ever had before, so that in some ways you make sure that no one is left out at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And again, it's relinquishing some of our knee-jerk reactions of, let's say, holding firm to ideas about aesthetics, right? Maybe the best solution is not necessarily the most beautiful one, and that's very difficult for designers.
That's
to,
shocking to say that.
right? Never thought I'd hear myself say that, but it really comes down more than ever before to purpose. You know, asking why are we doing things, and our clients are expecting us to be asking those questions. Why?
Yeah, I think there is a utilitarian thing that we have to explore and understand. What I was trying to say earlier on, you know, some of the existing formats that we're just used to, that we would automatically roll out, don't actually work anymore. They're not. We might have thought they're appropriate, but actually they're just not working for what people want, what makes people feel comfortable, but also just in a practical sense, you know, they need other formats to work for them.
Yeah, I think culturally there's a lot more awareness now. You know, we're sort of always talking about like neural divergence. Actually, you know, so certain people actually concentrate better in a kind of, you know, a buzzy environment with a bit of noise in the background. Some people are like, no, please lock me down, build me a fort. I will sit in the corner and just do what I need to do.
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, actually, when I work from home, my energy levels just ramp down during the day, leading me towards the fridge. and I just know my productivity is rubbish. But you know, if I'm not interacting with people, and one of the reasons I like to come to the office, I think there's a lot of people like this, is the buzz keeps me going.
Yes.
You know, it's sort of like a caffeine shot. I was having people around.
I was hearing this just yesterday in here, that people are coming back for the buzz, and it's really important that somehow we make sure they find the buzz that they're expecting. There's not so few in an area, maybe.
Well, that's a good point, particularly for a Monday and a Friday.
Yeah. The other finding, which I thought was really relevant to our discussion today, was that the collaboration areas are needed and they're wanted, but sometimes I find collaboration out in the open, a space kind of in the open where people are on view, that's uncomfortable for many, and they want a room or at least a curtain just some visual, a little bit of privacy to make that those newly needed levels of collaboration.
Yeah.
And of course, the hybrid thing is a factor as well, both visually and acoustically. And I think there's going to be layers of findings as we develop new designs and new configurations and new settings. We'll probably find new layers of challenges as we go.
I think that you raise acoustics, and actually that is the area at the moment that we're finding the most challenging, if you like, or problematic. Not only acoustic separations between rooms, because everybody's got amplified sound and you've got speakers hanging on walls that vibrate the walls, etc. And suddenly, the spec that you thought was going to work actually doesn't work that well. But also, people are speaking louder because they're in a hybrid situation. And if they're doing that in open plan,
Yes.
there's an acoustic issue there. But I must say, in terms of vibrancy, I was absolutely struck by the scene outside your door here, which is people teeming around. I suppose it is Clerkenwell Design Week. But this gives an awful lot of energy to the situation.
That's actually what most of us want in a workplace, isn't it? People, buzz, vibrancy, even if you're concentrating, to have some office buzz going on has value, has positive value.
Yeah, and I've run into colleagues, we're obviously a global company, so getting a chance meeting with the colleagues not that easy, but you come here and you run into colleagues and people in the industry you haven't seen for a few years. And I think the thing is that we need that as humans. That's the empathetic approach. Like, how's your family doing? And you're seeing old friends. And you don't get that over Zoom. You don't, even a text message, you don't get that. And I think what's important though is space allowing for that. Being able to create a space that says, I can pass a colleague and say hello. We're not going to completely disrupt them. If he's in a rigid line of desks over at desk, aisle 4, B12 desk, we're probably not going to, have that chance, but creating those meaningful chances within his space. I was speaking to a company earlier this month, and they were talking about the heartbeat of a space. And I thought that was a really interesting concept. How do you get a heartbeat within a space? And you need people for that. Don't you?
I agree. I think having a space where you give a platform to different people to come together, collide, but also, the opportunity, like Clerkenwell Design Week, this event is being organized by a group of people, and they've worked really hard, created these different events where people can come together. The spaces are here and they're well designed, but having that event where people can come together is also important. And I think in a workplace, you have amazing offices, and yet some offices are really empty. So I think it also comes down to the management, the leadership teams, and how do they communicate to the rest of the teams to bring them together into those spaces that are beautifully designed. It's a bit of a combination of spaces, policies, communication, clarity with the teams on the events that are taking place in the office, and team bonding opportunities for them.
Bit of orchestration just to facilitate it, to help the flow of people coming in the door.
That's a really interesting point. That's so representing management. A bit of a shout out then to Media 10, who organised Clerkenwell Design Week. So they're making something happen in pre-existing nice spaces.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really good.
But I think, particularly the management point, pre-COVID, 5 or 6 years ago, you do a survey of an office and you find that actually there's only 50 to 60% of people there anyway, because there's people on holiday, there's people on courses, there's people visiting other offices, there's people in meeting rooms. And then you add to that now the cohorts that want to be working from home. And if I was renting these offices, I was saying, well, I'm spending a lot of money on this space, which is so underutilized. A, it's a waste of money, and B, it's not very nice to be in. I was studying the speed gate data for a client of mine just yesterday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they were getting about 1,800 people in. On a Monday, they were probably getting about 900 to 1,000 people in. On a Friday, they were getting like 400 to 500 in. It's quite interesting, actually. Friday's the day that everybody wants to be at home. they've probably been through the week and they're looking forward to the weekend. But Monday, quite a lot of people coming back. But for those that do come in on
They've
that,
been through the weekend and they're looking forward to the week.
yeah, well, maybe the batteries are recharged.
Maybe this is
But-
the case for the 4-day work week.
Well, well, first of all, it's not a very efficient use of real estate.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to have to sort of turn their mind to that sooner or later. Secondly, for those people that do come in, you're going to come into a ghost town, which is not very comfortable to live in. And we're hearing some clients wanting to only fire up certain floors on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and have a more compact
Yeah.
office for Monday and Friday. Or if they're not on multiple floors, you have a zone on the floor, which is only used on the or is not used on the Monday and Friday. So you can actually have a sense of people being together. But that's quite tricky, and it's certainly not very efficient.
Yeah. And I think adding to what you were saying, Jack, about the, smart use of resources and real estate, right? It is a bit of a tragedy to have offices that sit half empty, and if there was maybe a different way of looking at how these assets are utilized, and perhaps the way in which they can serve the communities in which they are located. And this is something that we're seeing with a few of our clients in the Bay Area, where there's a sense that there is a responsibility to give back to the community, not just take resources, but give back. And in some cases, practical example is we've designed the ground floor to be entirely flexible so that it's a multi-purpose space during business hours. But then on the off hours, the space is open and available for the community, for exhibits, for events, for hosting talks. And so it becomes part of the fabric of the city in which these headquarters are located. And it's a bit more virtuous, but it also is a great vehicle for ESG initiatives, for example, because there's now an ability to invite certain community representatives, and so opportunity for the employees to get involved. And maybe this is something that we as designers again should be at the forefront of saying, wait a minute, this is important. There's greater things at stake than just the workplace itself, but its role in the larger ecosystem.
I think that's really interesting, and then it sort of leads me to some thoughts that we've been talking about the building being a good corporate citizen itself. It used to be that you'd build these buildings in somewhere like the city, and all the ground floors would be blank because nobody wanted to work on the ground floor, so you put the facilities management team there. And then it was no, we must have the facades to be activated by retail or something, more retail brought into the city. But then we were working on 22 with Stuart Lipton and his team. We're saying, well, how can we make this building actually contribute to the life of the city and to provide facilities for the city? And of course, they're trying to suck people from the city into the building. So it's not a fortress. So it's permeable. And I wanted to street markets in the reception. That's a step too far. but I think there is something there about either the building or, as you were putting it, the occupier contributing to the life of the city. And that's got to be more and more true now, because you see the effect of less people coming into the city now is devastating on the cafes and the little shops, etc., whose trade has halved.
Yeah.
Really difficult for them to keep going.
Yeah.
So not just the workforce, it's got to be attractive for local communities as well and work hand in hand.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think what's so interesting about that was we were having a conversation with Jiu-Jitsu this morning, and they were mentioning that they look now at neighborhoods, not just buildings, but neighborhoods. And I thought that was a really interesting, we put these iconic buildings into areas. Now, what are we going to do surrounding? And one of that piece you're talking about, what they were doing in the Bay Area, is quite interesting, because that would engage employees. If you were having a community event Friday, let's say 3 p.m., you know, the employees come down, see what the communities, you know, the activity is, and it brings more of a sense of belonging to that neighborhood, doesn't it? And I think that is something, you know, spaces that are designed for that is so impactful.
That's really good, isn't it? It's not just ticking some CSR box, but
Yeah.
it's actively a high sense of social responsibility in action. I just thought, Gordon, have we got any Q&A coming in? Certainly welcome points, viewpoints, questions from our audiences
Yeah, it's
online.
So one of the questions that has come in is about the reasons that some regions are going back to the office, and what are they doing right on the return to the office? And I know you mentioned in France and Paris that seems to be, you know, something that didn't really cease. But I thought it was interesting the other day you mentioned about a lot of the, you know, part of the culture is the colleagues get together for lunch. You know, how does an employer facilitate that type of?
Well, France has an amazing culture around food. And so for us, it's very natural to all stop at once around lunchtime and actually eat together. It's frowned upon to eat at your desk. So I'm probably the only one that's guilty of it, as I'm reminded often. But no, it's really a case where people genuinely look forward to being with their colleagues. I would say it's not perhaps just the office. There's the fact also that a lot of people live in the central area of Paris, so commutes are not what they can be in Los Angeles, where I lived for a number of years, for example, and it's not uncommon to have, you know, a 3-hour commute every day to and from work total. And so if you have to make the effort to go to the office, it's a different consideration, whether you have a commute or not. And I think one interesting, so it's a commute. I think, you know, culture definitely plays a part, but perhaps, and those things are not necessarily things that we can control as designers, but more interestingly for us, we just launched our workplace performance index, a survey that we've done across the UK, Germany, and the US. And what we found across these geographies is that there's a greater proportion of people wanting to go back to the office than actually is working in the office. And the thing is they're just not finding the types of amenities that would draw them back to the office. And those have to do with spaces that are a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more extreme, you know, places to recharge and refuel, places to do intense focus work, places that are designed around food, for example. So really, you know, a focus on amenities that makes it such that, you know, we sort of design for the extremes that you were mentioning, right?
What can we design in?
And all the senses. I think we talk
Yeah.
about neurodiversity, but it's also to design for the senses, right? Acoustics is one, but sensitivity to lighting is another one, and color and smell. You know, in the Bay Area, we're doing aromatherapy rooms for. I mean, it's very hippie, but it's the reality, right? For they're at the forefront of different things, and the importance of smell in creating an experience. It all revolves around experience.
And we need another depth of experience, don't we? Because workplace is competing with the home now, as we all know. And it's got different dynamics. Some find it much easier, as we've touched on, to work from home than others do. But it is a new level of experience that's being sought from a more empowered workforce. And what can we do? Where are the lacks and what can we do to meet them? I think it's going to be a journey. One or two have already said. It's not fixed in a month, is it? It's going to take us time to find and explore and meet those needs. I think also the whole return to office will snowball, because if you're going in there to meet people, the more people that are there, the more you want to be there. I don't know when. I don't know if everyone agrees. But
Yes.
I think in some time frame, it will grow it of itself.
Well, it needs to be better than home. I mean, we've heard this a lot.
And we, it's what we all love doing, isn't
Yeah.
it? Making it
Yeah.
as good as it could possibly be and better than it has been
Yeah.
before.
And I bet it will go from sector to sector as well, because you're going to have the financial sector and there's going to be a whole host of different activities happening there, whereas compared to maybe a media firm,
Yeah.
where it probably is a little bit more buzzy in certain places, but then of course it can be still pretty active within the finance offices as well. So
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
even the finance, working with those teams, the regulation they have around,
yeah,
you know,
the
employees
compliances,
working in
yeah.
compliance, employees working from home. That has been a big push to get them back in. So I think, everyone has their own challenges.
Taking certain private documents home is hit them in sometimes, hasn't it?
It seems to be a trending problem.
It can be frowned upon.
But
And then we have to have the long-term view also. I mean, all these changes happen in a very, very short span of time, right? And
Yeah.
it's a big experiment that's unfolding before our eyes, but how much do we really know, a year or 2 years out of the pandemic? And what we're reading now is this article in the Financial Times about how, which you were alluding to, the people that are suffering the most are the most junior people who don't have the benefit of serendipitous encounters, informal conversations, the accessibility and availability to leadership. Someone would not take half an hour to schedule a Teams with their boss, but if they bump into them at the coffee machine, they will strike a conversation. And so I think as appealing as it might have been at some point to work from home, some people are saying, wait a minute, I'm getting the raw deal here. I need this interaction. And that's coming to bear now.
Yeah, and that brings us on to, the old chestnut of the war for talent.
Yeah.
In numerous surveys in London have shown that of the big firms that are here, the average age is early 30s, 31, 32, that sort of thing. So 50% of the office, has been recruited in the last 10 years. And everybody's out there trying to get the best possible graduates. In the past, it might have been across a very broad range of skills, but now, particularly with digital skills, people are hunting in that same pool. So what are you going to offer them? A fabulous office to come and work and build your network and find your next boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, a mentor, and somebody to lead and inspire you, or a fabulous laptop that you can work from home, as much as you like. But I know who's going to win that war for talent. The people who've got the best offices that can provide a buzz. And that when you do bother to turn up, there are actually people there.
Exactly. Then and you really can build that network, which is building a future, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, nothing worse than taking the trouble to do the commute to find there's nobody there anyway.
Yes,
Yeah.
And I would say also, maybe it's a bit controversial to bring the topic up, but again, short time after the pandemic, as more time passes, there is also the reality of visibility, right? So it's not necessarily to say that employers don't trust employees when they work from home, but there is a bit of an unfair advantage to being more visible, and whether or not there will be a bias to accelerating a certain individual's career path because there's more physical presence, right? It's not just the quality of the work product, but is it or will it be a factor? I tend to think that it's probably a case that there will be a difference between those who are visible and.
Yeah, I completely support that, because I think, you just take this meeting here, and we were trying to do this over Zoom, you wouldn't have gotten the engagement. You don't get, I now have a conversation on which you get in 6 months, a year, but you now have that engagement. And I think even, just those chance engagements, your manager comes in from another location, and if you're in the office, you have that connection point. I think that is going to really be impactful.
And also what happens before the meeting.
And
We had a great conversation before. I'm looking forward to the conversation after the meeting, and that is sometimes just as valuable, if not more valuable than the encounter itself, right?
yeah, I mean, yes, I'm thinking of that caricature about how different nations go to meetings. You know, the Brits go to meetings to have a good chat and then sort it out after. The Germans go to meetings to tell people what they've already decided.
And the French go at it, they try to solve everything before, and then during the meeting, everything changes.
Yes, I think there is also the sort of thing about the spirit of endeavor that a company has, and whether people are in it together to do something, to do a great thing together. And I was thinking at the extremes. Elon Musk was a good example of this. I heard him ranting this week about, he said, I've got guys and girls, you know, who are building cars. You can't build cars from home. You have to come into the factory and build the cars. And so you lot in the office, you decide that you can stay at home while everybody else has got to come in and do this stuff. How fair is that? No, we want everybody in. We are a team. You know, we are together. We want to build this great thing that we're doing together. And I think there is something about that, about actually making the effort, you know, to come in and be part of the crew and push things forward.
That's an interesting study, because that is, I mean, taking Tesla, that is a technology company in a vehicle manufacturer.
Yes.
You know, and you get two aspects of that, and you got to pair them back up together. And so, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a while ago, I judged a competition and I had to go to Leipzig to see Zaha Hadid's BMW factory. And what was really interesting there was there were two production plants. And then in the middle was the offices. And the cars from one production plant had to go to another production plant. And they're taken through the offices on gantries from one to the other. And the view there was, we want the people who are working in the office to understand the product.
That's fantastic.
You know, to actually physically see the results of what they're diddly doing on their laptops for, and to be engaged with it, to be fully engaged, part of the team. And you can't do that from home.
Yeah. Because one aspect of it is that you're all part of the same mission, aren't you? You know, you might be working in your office, you might be working in a factory, but ultimately it's the same company and they have the same values. So yeah, that's my
sense of community as well, isn't it? You see someone else work on one part and you've maybe done a little bit of it, but you see the whole product come together and it's beautiful.
Yeah. And we had a certain amount of social capital, going into the pandemic and then working from home. But again, the view from 2 years out of the pandemic, as you're starting to see some attrition, some churn, some new hires, that sense of community is really what's at stake, because the newcomers don't have the benefit of really truly understanding a company's brand, its vision, its mission, its culture. And so I think you have to be very careful and mindful that you're not giving all of that away for convenience.
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean by the magic of cumulative maths, if you have a 15% turnover of staff a year, 4 or 5 years down the line, the vast majority of people are new.
Yeah.
And do they understand the business?
And the workplaces we create are the physical manifestation, right? They're sort of the guardian of those values and that culture, and they facilitate encounters and the way people treat each other and interact with each other. And so in some ways it's the culture of an organization. And so that is our responsibility.
And some exhibit of the purpose.
Yeah.
Some setting forth of this purpose and mission, community. It's so important, isn't it? Ultimately, it's critical. And is it more likely to be achieved remotely or altogether?
Yeah, we've just got a question about the purpose of the office. It's changing. What is the main purpose? I think, probably the overarching that is it's a people collector. You bring people together. You bring And you can do that through design, you can do that through offerings in a cafe, you can do that through ways that people work. You know, we have a client now that they measure their space by the number of surfaces you can work at. That could be a desk, it could be a phone booth, it could be a table.
I mean, I'll take a stab at it. I mean, to me, the purpose of the office, you know, is a catalyst for an organization's vision and mission, right? And ultimately serves as a physical manifestation of both the vision and the mission. And if you do that right, you create an environment that will create a culture. And if you do that right, culture, what is that? It's the thing that makes people make all the right decisions without being told what to do. And that is the purpose of the office, right? And if a company has employees that make all the right decisions without being told what to do, they'll be the best at what they do, I think.
It's excellent.
I think that there has been this overwhelming opinion on that office is a place where people will socialize, they will collaborate. But I think an office is a place of choice. You are there for what fits your role. If you know, there are people who are struggling to work at home because they cannot multitask, they cannot look after their kids and also be on their laptop, and so they're going into the office and focus work. And then there are people who are extroverts, they want to socialize, they want to collaborate, and so they're going into the office to meet people. But I think it will definitely be dependent on each individual case, why they go into the office, and that would be the purpose of it.
And to add to that, you know, we talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. For me, the office is a bastion of diversity, or has the potential to be a bastion of diversity, because where else do you have a physical place that caters and brings together people from different neighborhoods and just creates this big mixing chamber where there's wonderful interaction that happens? Because the thing that bothers me with, let's say, working from home, it's, you know, you stay with your like-minded group because you've chosen that, you know, but I just like this idea that everybody converges from all these different places, and that's healthy for a society.
I think a lot of businesses want that, don't they? That cross-pollination and those kind of by chance happenings when you just happen to bump into someone in the lift, or actually you start talking over the water cooler or whatever it is. It's almost having that hub, isn't it? That home for the business. And I guess also it's a cultural shift. People mentally have to think, I'm not just going here to work. It's much more than that. But unfortunately, the office has got to work harder in a way. It's got to do so much more to get people back. But if it offers the right solution, I think people will be, because they'll see it for what it is. The value of being there is so much more, perhaps, than being individual.
I don't think it's unfortunate either, because we all love a new challenge, don't we? In design and
It's a good challenge to have. It's nice,
and that you have things in common with people who otherwise you may not have had an opportunity to or willingness to interact with, right?
Yeah.
It's just bringing people together.
Yeah, brings you opportunities.
Yeah.
I think, I agree with all of that. But in addition, I see, you know, the office as a platform in a way, as a sort of base to drive the business from. And it's also sort of theatre. You know, where things happen, you know, where physical things happen between people, hopefully legal, and you know, it's what's going to make the business. It's what's going to transform the business. I do most of my work on an iPhone. You know, I don't, you know, the transactional, the stuff is very easy,
including design.
Well, I tend to ask people to do design. Well, actually, thumbnail sketches, not on an iPhone though. But no, the office is that sort of theatre where you actually forge the corporate culture, you forge the ambitions, you bring people on board, and you form a team.
And you have choice, don't you? You have discretion, what you emphasize, what you put to the fore. And you say, we're standing for this, and we celebrate something, some good act of care or kindness or whatever your values are. I expect that's in all of our values. And you can choose what to dial down or what to dial up. You can dial up the brand if it's a emerging brand or a startup, or and so on.
I think, I think the title of this session is the Empathetic Office. And one thing we haven't talked about is the sort of pastoral care that needs to go on inside an organization. And it's quite difficult to see whether, people are having difficulties or need some support or whatever when you're on a Zoom call. But actually, when people are in real life, there's a lot of opportunities to say, are you okay? And to bring people on and to help people to not only perform better, but to be happier in the work that they do. And I think there's the office can be a refuge for some people, because not every home is a particularly happy home. So it can be, I think, an empathetic place. And
At lots of levels, even if you don't ask that direct question, are you all right? Is everything all right? You might just get them a coffee anyway.
Or you're having a coffee anyway, and it sort of comes out.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, the office is actually an exchange. It's where you can exchange even just in passing. Saying hello with a smile in the morning could be enough to just, somebody's having a bad day, one of your colleagues are having a bad day, just that hello. It's an exchange in person. You often think about exchanges, in business, whether it's Wall Street or anywhere like that, but just exchange of personality and culture, and you don't get that on a screen, do you? And like, we live in a suburban area outside of Philadelphia, and culturally we're pretty much stuck where we are. There's not a lot going on. But go in the office and you just have this diverse staff there, and you find out, and if somebody is having a bad day, well, you prop each other up, you help each other out, and it could just be a word that you say. And I think that empathetic, what you brought in, I thought that's really important, because just an empathetic word, can I get you a coffee? Can I, how you doing?
Takes me back to, I think it would have been 4 years ago, Philippe, in your New York studio on Broadway. And we were discussing our New York Design Center, envisioning it. And one of the teams said how human connection is the new luxury. I think we've just found that at a whole new level, haven't we? We're now really working on answering to that. So how do we get the most people in, connected, has sort of an interesting platform, mixing chamber, exchange, some interesting words for how people come together and what they do when they're together. Quite insightful, I think.
Yeah, and in the most challenging, experimental, never been done before context, which is really exciting and inspiring. And the expectations on the side of our clients and users also are sky high.
The other thing I think
They have
about
newfound awareness for the purpose of the office.
Sorry, it never been done before. I think what I also see is we're emerging from that shock and almost a paralysis about what do we do, to getting boots on the ground, do some things, try out new ways of working, and then change them again if we have to. You can't do endless trials in a quarter of one floor, can you? You have to take an action. I'm sure we'll find new challenges, but that's like a life's continuum, isn't it? There'll always be things to tweak anyway.
There is a problem with these pilot studies, because they're rarely done on a big enough scale to really work properly. They're sort of done in isolation in a small part of the office, and actually, they're often I've done a number of them. Some have worked and some haven't. But I think you've got to be brave with your experiments and then do them at a sort of a sufficient scale that really improves or deproves the case.
Yes, and give it time.
Yeah, it's got to be enough to make a difference, hasn't it? Because if it's just a small corner of an office, here's a trial view, different type of desks that we can trial on. You're never really going to see how that actually impacts your entire office. To go from one scale to another, it's got to be almost like a whole floor building, really.
Yeah.
isn't it? To see how
Yeah.
that works.
Being brave, make a move, do the
Yeah.
investment, give it time to see how it fits. Because day one, there's always reactions, aren't there? It's just human nature. If something's changed, well, there's going to be reactions that's wrong because it changed. But to actually make the move at sufficient scale, I think that's very valid. And we see great clients doing that.
Yeah, and you know, you can get a design standard around that, but that was interesting. One of our clients we were talking to said, you know, we have a design standard, but we also have a local standard, you know, and there are certain things that you got to change up the space for, you know, that particular culture or that particular region.
Absolutely, yeah.
And being adaptable, being flexible. You know, there are core things we're going to bake into a floor plan. We know that, but then being able to change that up, being able to have the vision and the empathy,
Mhm.
for whatever region you're in, whatever the use case of the space is very important. And I think it's something that, you know, we see a lot of clients, they're trying to say, you know, we really learned that out of COVID. It's something we learned is we can't offer the same thing time after time and expect different results. We're going to get the same results that we had previously, and
Yeah.
they didn't like it.
And we know a lot of the needs now, don't we? We don't know the whole thing and in perfection, but we know what a lot of the needs are. We know there's many more video meetings, and that's probably going to stay. So we need small areas. We don't want to waste a meeting room this size on one video call for one-on-one. So we know a lot of the needs. And then the finessing of exactly what's needed, I think is going to take time.
Yeah, and in some ways acknowledging also that, you know, our work as designers doesn't end when we deliver a space. In fact, maybe it starts after the space is delivered, and it's all about continuous improvement and tweaks, and that takes you know, humble designers and willing clients.
And more of a partnership idea rather than a transaction.
Yeah.
But you raised the thought in my mind of I think you mentioned global standards or something akin to global standards. And actually, even before COVID, global standards were problematic in some way because in each area there are different sort of cultures in the workplace. And I remember doing Barclays global standards once, and London thought they could impose a standard on Hong Kong, and they were just so far off the mark. Well, now I think actually, if you're doing those global standards and guidelines, you'd have another level of challenge to figure out what was going on. I mean, you've just talked about in France, because people maybe have small apartments and like to eat together, they behave in a certain way. But just 22 miles across the channel, we behave in a different way. People I'm talking about say, you know, in the Far East, there is no working from home. Everybody's just in the office and that's it, job done. So I think there is, if there was a diversity culture before COVID, I might bet that there's a broader diversity in office cultures post-COVID going on.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Well, that brings us to our hour, and I think this has been a very enjoyable topic. Obviously, we're only just touching the surface of it, but any final thoughts around the table before we wrap up? Or
I think just kind of, you know, adding to what Jack has mentioned, you know, with the diversity increasing within the workforce and the way people work, I think going forward from a designer perspective, you know, pre-COVID, we used to design for our teams. I think going forward, we will have to design with our teams and really understand what the requirements are, how they work, and then taking that feedback and creating iterations and improving as we go along. So that's my last word on that.
Fully empathise.
yeah. Actually empathizing with the team,
Yeah.
you know, getting into their shoes, saying, you know, what is it? What do we draw you from home, and how can we provide for you?
I think I would say, I agree with everything you said. I think I would say we have to seize this incredible opportunity and moment in time where there's a lot of acknowledgement that we don't have all the answers, whether on the client side or on the design side. And with that comes both opportunity and responsibility, and that we should be bold enough to make the most of these circumstances and, invent the workplace of the future as we have the opportunity to do that right now.
Yeah, so, well, thank you very much for joining. Thank you for joining our 38 Insights Live directly from the design studio here in London during the Clerkenwell Design Week. And please, we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar, or hopefully in-person webinar at NeoCon. And so thank you and have a good day.